Podcast City Network.
Hey guys, this is Chris with Final Score, and we are back for yet another awesome episode. And I tell you what, we have so much to talk about this week. So much has happened since we were last with you. Man, I cannot tell you the amount of things. It's going to be crazy. I'm really excited for this episode. So definitely make sure that you check us out on all of our social media offerings, on Facebook at /PCN Final Score, on Twitter at PCN Final Score. And we actually have some announcements. But before I make the announcement, I'm going to bring in my co-host here. Craig, how you doing today, bud?
I'm great, man. We were just talking about the lineup that we're going to have today. I was just going to be a playoff preview, and just goes to show you how much can happen in sports in a week's time.
Most definitely.
So I'm excited. I know you were saying you're excited for the show. I'm excited for the show too. We got a lot to cover today.
But the first thing that we got to lead off with is a couple big announcements. One that I recently announced on the Deleted Wrestling podcast, if you were able to catch that through the Podcast City Network last week. Excuse me. We made the announcement that you can now get Final Score on Google Play Music. So
yes.
Yeah, that's right. So go on to Google Play Music and search keyword Final Score and listen to all your favorite episodes right now, today, this second. Go ahead and do it. But we have something else in the wings that was just recently announced within the past 24, 48 hours. I lose track of time sometimes, so I have to give myself a window. But Final Score is also... I'm getting old, man. I'm getting up there, the hip. It's not always... Anyways, it gets a little creaky. Anyways, so Final Score, though, is now going to be available in the iTunes store. So make sure that you hop on over into iTunes, search keyword Final Score, give us a subscribe. That way you can get the notifications for every new episode we come out with and listen to all the great stuff that we have. Tell you what, Final Score is going places.
Hey, we're now on Podbean, now iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. Am I missing anything?
I think that's all of it right now. Well, of course, you can't forget the Podcast City Network.
Just on Podcast City Network.
Yeah, just go over to podcastcity.net /Final Score.
We're waiting on one more, I believe. But we're not going to announce it.
We are, but we'll announce that when
that'll
that comes.
Be a big one.
That'll be a big one,
that'll
too.
Be a big one.
Really excited. But Final Score is going places, and that's the big thing you gotta check out. So definitely make sure you go over to our Facebook, give us a like, go over to our Twitter, give us a follow. Make sure that you go ahead and subscribe to us on all of our outlets that we just previously named, and definitely check out all that we have going on, because Final Score is going places. And one place something is not going, no longer going, is the Alliance of American Football.
Oh, AAF, we hardly knew thee.
We hardly knew thee, and you broke our heart so quickly. And it's crazy. If you have not heard the news, the Alliance of American Football has suspended operations as of this past Tuesday in a very shocking move to some not so shocking apparently to others, and has turned into this roller coaster, just this little runaway train of things coming out left and right about how this situation really was and is. We've seen a lot of crazy stories of players and coaches being legitimately kicked out of any housing that they were in that was offered by the franchises. Mixed stories concerning injured players and their medical care. And a nice little footnote, I did notice this one just recently, that apparently the AAF threw on a $900 bonus on the last game checks. Some players said they got that. Some players said they didn't. It was for quote-unquote airfare. So it's been a really, really crazy time. So Tom Dundon shuts everything down, comes out, says things are not viable anymore. Tried to strong-arm the NFL and the NFL Players Association. What is going on with this whole situation?
Yeah, we keep hearing a lot of stories all over Twitter, and it is just I know we made some posts about it earlier this week, but the more stories that keep coming out, it seems like the worse and the more sad this situation gets.
Oh, definitely.
There were players that were staying at team hotels and things like that, but they were never paid for staying in those apartments. So one of the players on Twitter tweeted out that he woke up to over a $2,500 charge pending on his account from a hotel they stayed in.
Mm-hmm, I heard
Players
about that one.
got back to their hotel or wherever they were staying, and all their stuff was out in the lobby.
Yes,
outside, out of all their rooms. Like, it's amazing to me how terrible of a situation this gotten so quickly. But if you talk to anybody close to the AAF or any of the players, because I know we know a few. I know one of the players who plays in the Arena League.
Yes.
And some of his friends were playing in the Alliance for the Orlando team. And they were saying a couple weeks ago that this is going to fold because they were shutting down, like doing less practices. They weren't doing stuff as much anymore. And they were just like, some of them kind of knew it was coming, but it doesn't make it that much better.
No, it really doesn't. When you look at it, the cracks definitely were forming as things went through. When you hit week 2 and you need a new financial investor, that kind of draws some red flags. But a lot of people thought when Tom Dundon stepped in that everything was going to be okay. But when news started coming out that a lot of things were pretty much relied upon on broken promises and things of that nature, a lot of people didn't get paid. I saw news reports even for Orlando Apollos where UCF was not paid for Spectrum Stadium and its use. Yeah,
they were not paid a single dime. They were owed more than $1 million from the reports that I read. And more, I know more things are going to come out as this situation gets worse. But it was a bunch of silence from the powers that be in the Alliance, which is really, really weird.
Yeah, that's really shocking when you think about it. You think if you're heading up this big thing, maybe it's just embarrassment. I don't know. But at the end of the day, if you're heading up such an organization, you need to take accountability, put yourself out there and be like, hey, my bad or something.
But it's okay because the Alliance officially tweeted out an apology tweet.
Oh, man.
2 days ago.
Which we got April an official
5th.
Tweet.
April 5th. They got an official tweet out there. I know Bill Polian came out and made an apology statement, which wasn't really a statement. It was more of like something he had typed up and then tweeted out again. It's insane, man. I understand. I know what's going on. I think I know who's at fault here, but it's so bad. It's such a terrible situation.
It really is. And I think what really surprises me about it, put aside the fact that this was all based on promises, put aside the fact that there was no money really backing anything until Tom Dundon comes in. But the thing I look at is that attendance was starting to kind of come in certain markets, in some they weren't, and maybe that had an effect on it as well. Merchandise sales, I also heard, were not the greatest in all markets, but some were. So you had viability here. My thing is, if you have an issue with money, you need to get investors before you try and take this thing out for a drive, because you end up with this type of a situation. This was a situation that they never should have even attempted, really. If you don't have the money backing, don't do it, because it's going to flop every time. Yeah. And I think that's what Tom Dundon saw. He came in, he saw all the cracks in the walls, saw that things were not quite what they were appearing to be, and shut it down. Now, on the onset, I honestly was on the other side of the fence. I really thought that, this was Tom's fault. Maybe Tom just came in to try and get all kinds of different things.
Yeah, Twitter is ablaze right now, and it's been the last few days. There's still a lot of people that we kind of get information from and read about Alliance stuff, people that are close, and they're all still blaming Dundon for this whole thing.
Oh, yes.
Which, if you're that invested in this kind of adventure, I could see how you're on that side of the fence.
Well, definitely. He's the one that pulled the trigger.
Yeah, and you were talking about viewership. After only 8 weeks of game telecasts across all the networks, CBS, TNT, NFL Network, the league averaged 556,000 viewers per game, or per weekend, I guess you could say, per week. So, still, that's still a decent amount of viewership each week. But we went to one of the Orlando games. We've been to some of them, and it was just that you could see it was getting a little bit of traction finally. But yeah, if you don't have the liquid money, they had everything lined up as far as partnerships and the contracts, the viewership. They had a partnership with NFL Network. You knew the league was right behind it. You knew the NFL was going to be right up next, part of their quote 3-year plan that they had. But they just, if you don't have the liquid money to spend when you need it in the season, you could have all the promises that you want and all the contracts you want, but if you can't fulfill that, I thought it was really weird when Bill Polian put in his statement that he put out
Right.
that their idea was to finish the season, pay back their creditors, which means you went into some serious debt to do this thing. Which, as most Americans can tell you, if you're deep in debt, you can't go anywhere in life.
No, you really cannot, because everything you make is going to go towards that debt regardless.
Exactly.
That's why I don't have student loans anymore. So
Yeah, get rid of that crap.
yeah, if you can definitely get rid of those, get rid of those. I was so
working
happy
on it.
when I did. But the big thing I look at it, you can't. It was just so bad. You can't just hope that everything's just going to come together and that everything's just going to go the way you want with no money. And they should have taken more time, maybe taken another year or so to try and get the investment money that they needed to be able to stay viable, at least for one complete season. At least have all the money for one season. Because at that point, if you're able to go into your off season, sit down with the NFL and be like, hey, this is something we're interested in. We know you're going to be renegotiating your CBA here soon. Let's make something happen. You know, maybe that would have been a more realistic approach, because you know just as well as I do, any business you start, you have to have an expectation that you're going to be working in the red for some time. It's just how it works. You can't expect that, okay, we're going to come out the gate, people love football, and this is just going to be profitable.
Yeah.
That is pipe dreams at that point. You're just hoping that that's going to happen. That's not realistic. And when Tom Dundon came in, he definitely saw a business venture that he thought could be viable. And I don't blame him for getting involved the way he did, because he had most notably wanted to be in football. So, and he had found a little bit of success with hockey and obviously with all of his business ventures beforehand. But I think once he got in, he saw how everything was actually being run. I think that's where you really look and see, okay, well, what can we do to save this? And Tom Dundon tried. Looking back, Tom Dundon really tried to save this.
You'll even if you go back and look at some players' Twitter accounts and talking about this situation, ones that have been in the AAF. Who was it? I think it was Garrett Gilbert himself came out and said that he's actually thankful that Tom Dundon stepped in, because it gave them 7 more weeks to play and practice and prepare versus
and be able to showcase themselves for NFL teams.
I mean, and a handful, we'll go over a few later, but a handful of players have been signed to NFL teams already, which is great news.
Including Garrett.
Including Garrett Gilbert.
So yeah, definitely. And that I think it was a very good move. And it did give us more football, which, you know, you can never go wrong with more football. But
yeah,
you can't keep a business like this going, and you reach a point where you've sunk in enough money, which we know at this point Tom Dundon sunk in $70 million liquid.
Yep.
That is probably he's never going to see again, more than likely.
Yeah.
And you reach a point where you have to say enough is enough. We've lost enough money already. We need to cut ties. Now, it kind of stinks. It does come near the end of the season where we were starting to get our playoff picture a little bit formulated. A couple teams had already clinched, including the Apollos. You had already kind of relocated and allocated things for the move for your championship game from Vegas into Dallas. So, you know, there's a lot of things that were being moved, that were moving around, and looked like things were starting to set up shop for us to at least finish the season. And then, obviously, it didn't work out that way. But that's the nature of business sometimes.
Yeah, this whole situation, I mean, we're talking about how they got started, and rumor has it that they had all their investors lined up. Polian and Ebersol, that is. They had all their investors lined up, but then either weeks before the season or right before the season happened, sometime they lost some investors. They all backed out, or some of them backed out, which is why they then were short on cash, and that's where you needed a guy like Dundon to come in. From his perspective, you can blame him all you want for pulling the plug, but I mean, the guy's been known to be a cold hard businessman.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what else are you going to do? Are you going to keep dumping money into something? That's why I don't agree with how he went about it.
No, I don't either.
He went about the right way to tell the NFL, like, hey, we need your help to survive.
Mm-hmm.
But this goes back to what you were saying, and we were talking about this before we actually went on air, that that maybe they did this because they know the XFL was launching in 2020, and with all of Vince's money backing that, of his own money, that's all liquid that he took out for it. But did they launch too early? I think they didn't get all their ducks in a row. I think they just got like trigger happy that they needed to get this thing out, and they they now have been bitten in the ass because of it.
Yes, most definitely. And I have to agree, because when you look at it, maybe they ended up getting into a rush game just because Vince McMahon has a buttload of money. It may be tied up in a lot of ventures, but there's at a moment's notice, Vince could liquidate so much of what he owns and has accomplished to be able to create money. Then that's how he founded the XFL anyways. And Alpha Entertainment is literally liquidating on a spot just some stock that he had. Was less than 50% of what he has in WWE, was what was reported.
$250 million,
$250 million worth, and that he sunk just to get everything started, just get things rolling. Now Vince has buttloads of money. Vince is valued at somewhere around like $2 or $3 billion. So the man has money. He created WWE out of what his father was able to give him and turned it into the craziness that it is today. So the man has money. So you don't want a man like that having any kind of a head start on you. So maybe they want to try and jump the gun and try and get that jump start, which makes sense. But I still think it was mistimed. Vince, I think, has it right where you want to launch in 2020 during a CBA negotiating year. That way, as they're doing negotiations, they can always just look off to the side and be like, there's the XFL doing stuff right over there. And, oh, look at that guy. Oh, that was a good play. Look at that. And next thing you know, they start drawing interest.
I think the bigger thing for him is looking into this a little bit more. I did not know this until earlier this week, that he's actually been, because we were talking about how he's been in contract negotiation for TV deals with ESPN with the WWE. So he's actually in negotiation with both Fox and ESPN for the XFL for rights for all that kind of stuff. And I mean, if you have a company that's willing to invest, it depends on what kind of investments they are. If it's TV contracts like the AAF got, that doesn't mean crap.
No,
it's not going to mean anything. But if you can get Disney behind you, which is ESPN, ABC, all that kind of stuff. If you can get them in your corner, I mean, I was personally out there kind of just venting about the fact that ESPN gave 2 announcements about the alliance, the day that it started and the day that it ended. All their personalities on TV were crapping all over the AAF saying, "Oh, I've never even watched the game. I didn't even give a crap." They're crapping all over this league that they've never seen, but they know it's got NFL people behind it. But then I got into a conversation with one of the followers on Twitter that he's like, "Oh, it's all basically." We got to the point is it's all politics because ESPN is now, as we've complained about all the time, it is the most politically charged outlet of sports in the world.
It absolutely is. That's what their MO is. It's not all about sports. I used to be bigger into Sports Illustrated back in the day just because I felt they were more about stats. And then as you look at Sports Illustrated magazine versus ESPN magazine, ESPN's all about the showmanship, the stories, the politics, everything surrounding it. That's all they care about. It's always about politicking, which there's another piece about their politicking that we'll cover later that I really don't like.
Yeah,
but
they're
oh, you already know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, they're the E Network.
Yes,
they're the Entertainment Tonight of sports.
Yes, that's exactly what they
everybody hates, but you're not going to get away with it. You're not going to get away from them because they're all over the place now, especially with being bought out by ABC and Disney.
Exactly. And the big thing that I see as well is that, like you had mentioned, WWE is already in negotiations for the XFL rights. Big thing is he's already had contracts and connections with both of these companies. With Fox, SmackDown's going to Fox in October. That starts literally just 6 months from now.
How much you want to bet that's going to play into XFL if they get...
Oh, I'm sure it absolutely will because that deal's already in place. And then you look over, and some years ago, WWE and ESPN, because don't forget, ESPN used to crap all over professional wrestling.
True.
I mean, utterly crap on it because it is sports entertainment.
Right.
Now they report sports entertainment as part of the regular segments on their website.
They just did. They actually just did this morning on SportsCenter. They ran a piece because I was up watching the 8 a.m. SportsCenter.
Wow.
And they were doing a piece about WrestleMania and all that kind of stuff. But it was mostly highlighting the fact that we're gonna have our first ever all women main event at WrestleMania, which is a huge deal. Which rightfully so, it should get the coverage.
Oh, absolutely, it definitely should.
But a couple of years ago, ESPN never would have done that.
Oh, they wouldn't have touched it at all, but just because it's professional wrestling. But
Right.
now professional wrestling has become so mainstream to the point where you have athletes from other sports that come over and become superstars. Look at people, perfect example. Our main event for WrestleMania features Ronda Rousey, former
Right.
UFC champion. So just to see how far wrestling has come is phenomenal. But one person has been making tons of money off of this whole time is Vince McMahon, who's going to be able to take that money and be able to start venturing out into other aspects of sports.
Yeah, and I think he learned a lot from the last venture with how that that fiasco went down and NBC Sports and working with that whole issue. So it'll be really interesting to see how this thing launches. They haven't released anything other than announcing some coaches and GMs for these teams,
including Bob Stoops. Let's not forget Bob Stoops.
Who, I mean, it's got a lot of guys that have either been close to the college game or some in the NFL. The coach for the new Tampa Bay team they're going to have is an old NFL coach, Trestman, Mark Trestman.
Mark Trestman, yep.
So he's, I mean, you got that. There's, I want to say the one that's out west that they have there is another ex-NFL coach. But anyway, I'm just kind of thinking off the top of my head here.
Well, the thing I look at when you look at the body of the XFL is that they are trying to pull as much as they can into it, and maybe they've been having to take a certain amount of strategic moves just because of the AAF. But now with the AAF being no more, the question beckons, how much of the former staff that was in the AAF, coaches, managers, execs, end up in the XFL?
I think quite a bit, actually. Steve Spurrier has already hinted at the fact that he still wants to coach.
Hey, he's the winningest coach in AAF history.
He's the winningest coach at a few places he's been to.
This is true.
So,
but no, most recently, Apollos.
Are you going to buy a Orlando Apollos championship shirt?
Yes, I will. You know why? Because I will represent my team proud no matter how much they don't exist anymore.
So Mike Waddell out there for the Apollos, president of the ex-Apollos, if you're listening, we would like some FinalScore championship T-shirts for the 2019 Apollos.
Yes, because you guys did it. Congratulations.
They did it. Hey, Vegas acknowledged it.
They did.
Did you see that?
They did DraftKings. DraftKings is actually paying out. Yeah, they're paying out on people that bet the Orlando Apollos to win the inaugural championship.
Yeah, they're paying out those futures bets. So,
yep.
So the one big question about all this, we it's fun and games. We're talking about how they did that and talking about the XFL, but the one thing this all boils back down to is why isn't anyone stepped up and said anything, released anything? Bill Polian, I talked about, did that little snippet.
Yeah, but that's been it.
We haven't heard from Ebersol.
Nope.
Other than one small interview, which I heard about a few days ago. He said that he cannot speak on it because it's an ongoing legal process.
Yeah, so this isn't a criminal investigation.
There's a rumor. There's a rumor that they're going to sue Dundon for essentially stealing that technology that apparently has been so highly coveted. But players are going to turn right around and sue the league for all of this fiasco. So, who do you think's to blame here?
Oh, honestly, really going all the way back to it, you have Ebersol and Polian who were making all these promises with nothing to back it. You had no liquid asset to back anything. And we're literally going on hopes and dreams and the desire by players to try and get back into the NFL or get into the NFL at all. And really, really preyed on them to be part of your product and preyed on everything of everybody really wanting a league like this. So at the end of the day, this is not Tom Dundon's fault. Tom Dundon did what was necessary. He did what needed to be done. And it sucked for him that he had to lose $70 million in the process. But he did inevitably what was going to have to be done, because if this hadn't been done, we might have folded way back in week 2. So, you know, at the end of the day, Tom Dundon gave a platform for these players to be seen. This is solely on Ebersol and Polian, because both of them are the reason that they ended up in the mess that the AAF was in.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm 100% with you. We were complaining about, oh, why would Dundon do this? This is awful. You're an awful villain. Like you're an awful human being. And Twitter was on fire about this. Just in general, all the Alliance sports fans and faithful. I was part of the Alliance, not the Alliance, the Apollos, the official fan group.
Oh yes, the FA Apollos page.
Yeah, and everybody is all over Dundon's behind about it. I ended up leaving that group because that's all they complained about, which they have most of them have no idea what they're talking about.
Tons of vitriol.
So So I'm with you though. I mean, the more I learn, the more it's been a bunch of IOUs as payments from Ebersol and Polian, and I don't remember if we already talked about it. I know we talked about this before we went on air, but Polian's actual statement, he says in there that they wanted to sit down at the end of the season, pay their creditors, quote, pay their creditors and make necessary adjustments to move forward in a manner that made economic sense for all. That is literally saying that you went into such deep debt, you can't get yourself out unless somebody else bails you out.
And you know what more I see out of that too is that not only did you go in such deep debt, but you expected to make enough money through your first season to be able to pay off your creditors to try and have a second season.
And if anybody that is worked around minor league football or any non-NFL team knows, you don't make money. You don't make money in your first 1, 2, even 3 years. Because minor league football is a hobby. It's you don't do it to make money, especially if you own the team. Players got to pay fees to even play the game, as you know.
Oh, I definitely know because I was one of those players.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're owning that team, you know it's just a hobby. You're doing it for the love of it. You're never ever going to make money off anything.
Nope.
So I mean, I don't know what they were thinking, but it's just been such a huge fiasco, and I wish. We as the part of the show, we wish the best for all the people that are involved.
Oh, absolutely.
All the staff members, the players, the coaches. I hope some of them do end up playing in the XFL and they treat them much better than they were treated here.
Absolutely, and I think they will just because Vince McMahon knows how to run a business properly, and he's not going to do things on IOUs and on promises because Vince McMahon does not operate that way. He operates on knowing that he has the backing no matter what happens. That's how he's always run business, and that's why I feel the XFL will end up, inevitably, and call it a bold prediction, call it you heard it here first, I really truly believe this is going to happen. The XFL is going to end up being what the AAF could have been, and the XFL is going to end up being the farm league for the NFL.
I don't think you're too far off. Honestly, we were talking early in the AF season. This could be it. This is going to be the minor league system for the NFL and all that. But I really hope that the XFL can do what the Alliance couldn't, and I think they can. They definitely can do it financially. Who you've got on your back, but it'll be nice to see that actually come to fruition. But more importantly, we need to hear from Polian, Ebersol, and company. Absolutely. I don't even care if it's Dundon coming out and flat out saying, yeah, I pulled the plug because we had so much debt and their business model was awful.
Yep.
At least say something.
Yes, do something. Don't just alienate this fan base that you've now created that follows these 8 teams in these 8 markets and just be like, oh, well, he pulled the plug, so later. You can't approach it that way and just stay silent. You just can't. But the one tidbit, though, that I do want to throw out here that I thought was kind of interesting as part of the fallout of this is the fact that the WWE extended tryout offers for all of these players for the XFL and for WWE.
Yeah, it's only natural they're going to do that.
I mean, they're all athletes. 81% plus were in the NFL, so why not?
And a lot of players, when they're done with their NFL days or football playing days, end up going to the sports entertainment realm.
Definitely.
Anyway.
Yeah, just look at guys like JBL and Baron Corbin and The Rock.
Roman Reigns.
John
Cena played
John
D3.
Cena. Yeah, a lot of guys played football because you look at the makeup of most professional wrestlers, you either were a gymnast or you were a football player or you were a power lifter. Usually one of those 3. So it definitely makes sense. But it'll be funny to see how many of these guys end up in the XFL come that 2020 season. But one thing that we definitely got to make sure of, and that is we have to get a shout out to all of our sponsors. So definitely make sure that you stay with us. We have a lot of our playoff previews coming up next, so we'll be right back.
Podcast City Network.